close your eyes for a moment and imagine your mind as a physical space. For most of us, that room isn't a sanctuary. It's a chaotic office where the phones never stop ringing, or a courtroom where we are perpetually on trial. We walk into this space every morning the second we wake up, and before our feet even hit the floor, the voice begins. It's a voice that critiques the way we slept, the way we look in the mirror, and the long list of things we didn't finish yesterday. Think about the way you talk to yourself when no one else is listening. Truly listen to the tone. Is it the voice of someone who wants you to succeed? Or is it the voice of someone who is waiting for you to trip? If we were to take the things you say to yourself in the privacy of your own head and play them over a loudspeaker for the world to hear, would you be horrified? If you spoke to a friend, a child, or even a total stranger the way you speak to yourself during a difficult hour, you would likely find it cruel. And yet, we've lived with this internal monologue for so long that we've mistaken its harshness for truth. We have been conditioned to believe that being hard on ourselves is the only thing standing between us and total failure. We carry a deep-seated fear that if we are kind to ourselves, if we actually offer ourselves some grace, we will become lazy or complacent or lose our competitive edge. We treat our self-criticism like a whip, thinking that if we just strike ourselves hard enough, we will eventually turn into the person we want to be. But look at the cost of that logic. How much of your energy is being drained just by the effort of surviving your own thoughts? How much of your creativity is being stifled because you're afraid of the internal lecture that follows a mistake? Befriending yourself begins the moment you decide to walk into that quiet room of your mind and change the atmosphere. It starts when you realize that you are the only person who will be with you from your very first breath to your last. Everyone else, friends, partners, parents, will walk alongside you for a time, but you are your only permanent companion. If that is true, then living in a state of internal hostility is a very long and lonely way to spend a life. Imagine, instead, what it would feel like if that room became a place of safety. What if, when you dropped a glass or missed a deadline, the first voice you heard wasn't a sharp, "How could you be so stupid?" but rather a calm, "It's okay. Let's just clean this up." It sounds small, perhaps even trivial, but it is the most profound shift a human being can make. This isn't about ignoring your mistakes or pretending you don't have areas to improve. It's about finally deciding to stop being your own oldest, most dedicated enemy. We often think of kindness as something we give to others to make them feel better. But self-kindness is a practical tool for your own survival. When you stop the internal war, you suddenly have all that battle energy available for your actual life. You have more room to breathe, more room to heal, and more room to simply be. The quiet room of your mind should be the one place in the world where you don't have to perform, where you don't have to prove your worth, and where you are allowed to be tired, or wrong, or overwhelmed without being punished for it. It is the practice of becoming a supportive witness to your own existence. It is the decision to look at your own reflection, not just in the mirror, but in your thoughts, and say, I am on your side. That is where the reset begins. Not with a grand plan for a new life, but with a simple, quiet change in the way you talk to yourself in the dark. Take a moment to think about the last time you truly looked at yourself. Not to check if your hair was straight or if your clothes fit right, but to actually see the person looking back. For most of us, the mirror has become a place of evaluation rather than a place of connection. We stand there and we see a collection of flaws, a history of aging, or a tired face that hasn't met its own expectations. We treat our own identity like a project that needs constant fixing, a piece of stone that we are forever trying to chisel into something better. But in that process of carving away what we don't like, we often lose the person who was there to begin with. We have become experts at knowing the habits of the people around us. You know how your best friend takes their coffee. You know the exact look on a loved one's face when they've had a long day. You know what makes your coworkers stressed. But how often do you turn that same curiosity inward? How often do you sit with yourself and ask, who are you today? Without any judgment attached to the answer. We are so busy trying to be the person the world expects us to be, the productive employee, the perfect partner, the resilient friend, that we have become strangers to our own souls. This is the stranger in the mirror. It is the version of you that exists beneath the titles and the achievements. It is the part of you that feels the subtle shift in your chest when you're anxious, or the quiet hum of joy when you see something beautiful. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Why is it terrifying? Because if we accept ourselves, we have to stop the war. We have to admit that we are human, that we are limited, and that we have needs that we've been ignoring for years. Meeting this stranger requires a radical kind of honesty. It means looking at the parts of your personality that you've tried to hide or fix, and realizing they are actually trying to tell you something. Perhaps your procrastination is actually a sign of deep exhaustion. Perhaps your irritability is a signal that your boundaries have been crossed too many times. Your nervous system is constantly speaking to you through these sensations, but we've been taught to silence them. We treat our own feelings like inconveniences that need to be managed, rather than messages that need to be heard. Healing starts when you stop trying to edit your personality and start trying to understand it. Imagine if you met a stranger on the street who was struggling. You wouldn't start by telling them everything they're doing wrong. You would listen. You would offer a hand. You would try to see the world through their eyes. Why do we find it so much harder to do that for the person in the mirror? We spend so much energy trying to be better that we forget to be present with who we are right now. We tell ourselves, "I'll be kind to myself once I lose the weight," or "I'll be happy once I get the promotion. We make our self-acceptance conditional on a future that hasn't happened yet. But the stranger in the mirror needs you now. They need your compassion in the middle of the mess, not just at the finish line. To meet yourself is to realize that you are not a problem to be solved. You are a living, breathing person who has survived every difficult day you've ever faced. You are a repository of memories, some beautiful and some painful, and all of them have a right to exist. When you look in the mirror, try to see the child you once were, who only wanted to be safe and loved. Try to see the person who has kept going even when things felt impossible. When you finally decide to befriend that stranger, the reflection changes. It doesn't mean the flaws disappear, but they stop being the most important thing about you. You start to see the strength in your own eyes. You start to recognize that the person looking back at you is the only person who truly knows what it's like to be you. They are your oldest friend, your most loyal companion, and your most important relationship. It's time to stop looking past them and start looking at them with the kind of warmth you've been giving away to everyone else while leaving yourself empty. It's time to say, I see you, I'm listening, and I'm not going anywhere. Take a moment to sit quietly and feel the air in the room. Now, try to feel the invisible weight pressing down on your shoulders, the heavy, suffocating pile of shoulds that you carry from the moment you open your eyes until you finally collapse into sleep. I should be further along in my career by now. I should be a more patient person. I should be more resilient, more organized, more successful, more everything. We carry these expectations like a backpack full of stones, never realizing that we are the ones who keep adding more weight to it every single day. These shoulds are the invisible rules we live by, the scripts written for us by society, by our upbringing, or by the comparisons we make while scrolling through the highlight reels of other people's lives. We've become so used to the weight that we've forgotten what it feels like to stand up straight. We've mistaken this constant pressure for motivation, believing that if we just push ourselves hard enough, we will eventually reach a version of ourselves that is finally beyond reproach. But when we live by these rules, we create a painful, widening gap between our real selves and our ideal selves. We live in the gap. The real self is the person who is tired today, who is struggling to find focus, who feels a bit lonely or overwhelmed. The ideal self is a polished, perfect statue that never fails and never hurts. The wider that gap gets, the more we feel like failures. We look at the distance between who we are and who we think we should be, and we use that distance as an excuse to be unkind. We tell ourselves that we don't deserve rest or warmth until we've bridged that gap. A self-kindness reset is about the radical decision to stop living in the gap. It is about closing that distance, not by working harder to reach the ideal, but by bringing the real self back into the center of the room. It's about looking at your current reality and saying, you are allowed to be here. exactly as you are. Think of all the energy you spend pretending. Pretending you have it all figured out. Pretending you aren't hurt by that comment. Pretending you don't need help. That performance is exhausting. It's a weight that prevents you from actually moving forward because all your strength is tied up in maintaining the appearance of strength. When you drop the expectations, you aren't giving up. You are letting go of a burden that was never yours to carry in the first place. Imagine if you treated your expectations like old clothes that no longer fit. You don't have to hate the clothes to realize they are too tight and are making it hard to breathe. You can simply set them down. You can decide that being further along isn't as important as being right here. You can decide that being perfect is a poor substitute for being human. We often fear that if we lower our expectations, we will fall apart. But the truth is the opposite. When you stop demanding the impossible from yourself, you finally have the resources to do what is possible. You find that you have more patience for your mistakes and more room for your growth. You begin to realize that you are not a project to be completed, but a life to be experienced. The weight of expectations tells you that you are only valuable when you are achieving. Self-kindness tells you that you are valuable because you exist. Today, try to find just one should and let it go. Notice how your breath comes a little easier. Notice how the room feels a little lighter. You don't need to be the ideal version of yourself to be worthy of your own care. You are enough right now, in the middle of the struggle, in the middle of the mess, in the middle of the real, unpolished, beautiful life you are actually living. If someone were to offer you a glass of water when you were thirsty, you would take it without a second thought. But when your own mind offers you a moment of grace, why do you push it away? For many of us, kindness feels like a luxury we haven't earned, or worse, a dangerous sign of weakness. We have spent so long using self-criticism as a compass that we're afraid we'll lose our way without it. We've mistaken our constant state of anxiety for our ambition, and we've convinced ourselves that the only reason we've achieved anything at all is because we were there to berate ourselves every step of the way. We resist kindness because it feels like letting our guard down in a world that feels increasingly demanding. We harbor this secret, heavy fear. If I stop being hard on myself, will I just stop trying? If I'm gentle with my failures, will I ever get anything done? We treat our inner critic like a drill sergeant, believing that if the shouting stops, the soldier will desert. But look back at the most meaningful moments of growth in your life. Have you ever truly flourished because you were shamed into it? Or did you grow because for a moment you felt safe enough to try something new? Shame is a terrible fuel. It burns hot and fast, but it leaves behind nothing but ash and exhaustion. Kindness, on the other hand, is sustainable. It is the soil that actually allows a person to change. Yet, we push it away because being kind to ourselves forces us to acknowledge how much we've been hurting. It's often easier to stay angry at ourselves than it is to admit we are in pain. Anger feels like a shield. Kindness feels like an open palm. To be gentle with yourself is to admit that you are vulnerable. And in a world that prizes grit and hustle, vulnerability feels like a risk we can't afford to take. It takes a profound amount of courage to be gentle with yourself in a society that profits from your insecurities. There is an entire world built around the idea that you are a problem that needs a product to be fixed. When you choose self-kindness, you are performing a quiet act of rebellion. You are saying that your worth is not something that can be bought, earned, or negotiated. You are deciding that you are worthy of care simply because you are a living, feeling human being. Carl Jung observed, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." Most of us spend our lives looking outside, comparing our inner mess to everyone else's outer polish. We resist kindness because we think we don't look like the type of person who deserves it. We think kindness is for the people who have it all together, not for the people who are struggling to get out of bed, or the people who made a mistake they can't take back. But kindness is not a reward for a job well done. It is a fundamental necessity, like air or light. When you resist it, you are starving the very part of you that is trying to heal. We stay stuck in the cycle of self-blame because it gives us a false sense of control. If we are the ones at fault, then we are the ones who can fix it. But you cannot fix a broken heart with the same hammer that broke it. Try to notice the next time you feel that internal flinch when a kind thought enters your mind. Notice the voice that says, "I don't have time for this," or "I don't deserve this." Just notice it. You don't have to fight it. Simply recognize that this resistance is just an old, tired defense mechanism trying to keep you safe in the only way it knows how. You can tell that voice that you've found a better way to move through the world. You can choose to believe that gentleness isn't the absence of strength. It is the ultimate expression of it. It is the strength to stay open when everything else is telling you to close. Every reaction you have today, every sudden burst of irritation at a minor inconvenience, every wave of guilt that washes over you when you rest, every time you pull away just as someone gets close, is a building block from your past. We often look at our current behaviors and feel a deep sense of frustration. We ask ourselves, "Why am I like this?" Or, "Why can't I just be normal?" We see our patterns as flaws in our character, as cracks in the foundation of who we are. But if you look closer, you'll see that your personality isn't a collection of mistakes. It's a carefully constructed architecture of survival. Imagine your life as a house that has been built over decades. Some of the rooms were built during seasons of peace, but many of them were built during storms. The parts of yourself that you might dislike today, the walls you put up, the way you hide your true feelings, your tendency to over-prepare or overthink, were originally designed as protection. At one point in your history, being quiet kept you safe. At one point, being perfect was the only way to get the attention or the validation you needed. You weren't being difficult. You were being a child trying to figure out how to navigate a world that felt unpredictable. Instead of getting angry at yourself for being sensitive or avoidant, try to see those traits for what they actually are: old tools. They are the hammers and nails of a younger version of you who was doing the very best they could with what they had. You don't have to hate the person you used to be to become the person you are today. In fact, you can't truly move forward until you offer that younger version of yourself some gratitude. That person is the reason you are still here. They stayed awake when you were tired. They stayed vigilant when you were afraid. And they built those walls so that your heart wouldn't be overwhelmed. A self-kindness reset involves walking through the rooms of your own history and realizing you don't have to live in the cellar anymore. You can acknowledge that a wall was necessary 10 years ago, while also recognizing that it's blocking the light today. You can say to yourself, "Thank you for protecting me back then, but I am safe enough now to let some air in." This is the difference between self-judgment and self-awareness. Judgment wants to tear the house down. Awareness wants to remodel it so you can finally breathe. We often carry the weight of our past like a backpack full of heavy stones, feeling ashamed of the times we weren't strong enough or the times we failed. But there is no such thing as a wasted experience if it taught you how to survive. You are a living library of everything you've navigated. Every scar on your heart is a testament to your resilience, not a mark of your inadequacy. When you begin to view your history through the lens of kindness, the narrative changes. You stop being a victim of your past and start being the architect of your future. It takes time to dismantle old defenses. You can't just wish away a nervous system response that has been reinforced for 20 years. It requires a gentle, persistent patience. It means that when you feel that old fear rising up, you don't punish yourself for it. Instead, you place a hand on your heart and say, "I see you. I know why you're worried. But we are okay now." You are allowed to outgrow the versions of yourself that were built for survival. You are allowed to take up more space, to speak more loudly, and to be more vulnerable than you were permitted to be in the past. Your history is the foundation, but it is not the ceiling. By befriending your past, you stop running from it, and you finally give yourself the permission to build something new, a space where you don't just survive, but where you finally feel at home. Self-kindness often feels like a massive, mountain-sized goal that we have to climb, but in reality, it is found in the tiny, quiet gaps of your day. It is found in the pause. Think about the momentum of a typical afternoon. The way one task bleeds into the next. The way one stressful thought triggers a landslide of others. We live our lives like a train that has lost its brakes, hurtling toward an invisible finish line, terrified of what might happen if we actually slowed down. The practice of the pause is the act of gently pulling the lever and allowing yourself a moment of stillness before the next thing happens. It is that split second when you realize you're starting to spiral. Perhaps you just received an email that made your heart race, or you looked at your reflection and felt that familiar wave of disappointment. In that moment, you have a choice. You can follow the momentum into the fire, adding more fuel by criticizing yourself for being stressed or upset. Or you can choose to take one single conscious breath. That breath is a boundary. It is a way of saying to the world and to your own racing mind, I am not a machine. I am allowed to stop. When we live without pausing, we live in a state of constant reaction. We react to our boss, we react to the news, and most painfully, we react to our own internal critics. We become like a leaf caught in a storm, blown about by every passing emotion. But when you practice the pause, you reclaim your center. You create a small, sacred clearing in the middle of the woods where the noise can't reach you. In that space, you aren't a failure, or a worker, or a burden. You are just a human being, breathing. Think about how often you push through your own physical and emotional limits for the sake of a to-do list that will never truly be finished. We treat our bodies like engines that don't need maintenance, ignoring the flickering low-fuel light until we completely break down. The pause is your maintenance. It is choosing to sit in the car for 2 extra minutes before walking into the house so you can shed the stress of the day. It is closing your laptop for 60 seconds to feel the weight of your feet on the floor. It is the simple, radical act of checking in and asking yourself, what do I need right now? For most of us, that question is terrifying because we're afraid the answer will be, I need to stop. And we don't think we're allowed to. But self-kindness means trusting that your needs are valid. If the answer is, I need a glass of water, or I need to cry, or I need to forgive myself for that mistake, then listening to that answer is the greatest gift you can give yourself. When you start to pause, you create room for a new kind of internal logic, one that values your well-being as much as your productivity. We often think we need a week-long vacation or a total life overhaul to feel better. But the nervous system doesn't work that way. It heals in the small moments of safety you provide throughout the day. Every time you pause, instead of snapping at yourself, you are retraining your brain to believe that you are worth protecting. You are building a bridge back to your own soul, one quiet moment at a time. This practice doesn't require a special room or a perfect environment. You can pause in the middle of a grocery store, in a crowded meeting, or while standing at the kitchen sink. It is an internal shift. It is the decision to be a gentle observer of your own life rather than a frantic participant in it. It's the realization that the world will not fall apart if you take 30 seconds to be kind to yourself. In fact, the world, and your place in it, becomes much clearer when you aren't viewing it through the lens of exhaustion. Today, let the pause be your reset. Let it be the moment you stop running and realize that you've already arrived. We all have parts of ourselves that we've labeled as unacceptable. They are the qualities We've spent years trying to push into the basement of our personalities, hoping that if we lock the door tightly enough, they will eventually stop making noise. Maybe it's your capacity for anger, your deep-seated envy, your intense vulnerability, or the parts of you that feel too much or not enough for the people around you. We treat these traits like stains on an otherwise clean rug, scrubbing at them with self-improvement and shame, praying that the world won't notice they are there. But the more we reject these pieces of ourselves, the more divided and exhausted we become. To befriend yourself is to realize that those dark corners aren't occupied by monsters. They are occupied by parts of you that have been neglected and starved of light. We think that by being perfectly good, we will finally be worthy of love and peace. But as Carl Jung famously noted, I would rather be whole than good. Being good is often a performance, a mask we wear to keep others comfortable while we suffer in private. Being whole is something much more honest. It means acknowledging the full spectrum of what it means to be human. It means admitting that you have a shadow, and that it has just as much right to exist as your light. Think about how much energy you spend every single day monitoring yourself, making sure you don't say the wrong thing or feel the wrong emotion. Imagine if you took back all that energy, that constant internal policing, and used it to simply hold space for yourself. When you integrate your shadow, you stop trying to be a saint and start trying to be a person. You realize that your anger might actually be a guardian of your boundaries, telling you that something is unfair. You realize that your sadness might be a sign of how deeply you are capable of caring. Kindness is the light that allows you to see into those dark corners without flinching. It is the steady hand that unlocks the basement door and says, "You can come upstairs now. You don't have to stay hidden anymore." When we bring our shadows into the light of our own compassion, they lose their power to control us. A shadow only haunts you when it's behind your back. When you turn around and face it, it becomes just another part of the landscape. It becomes something you can work with rather than something you have to run from. Integrating these parts of yourself isn't about becoming bad or giving in to your worst impulses. It's about becoming authentic. It's the relief of finally being able to say, "Yes, I am someone who feels jealous sometimes," or, "Yes, I am someone who struggles with being selfish." By owning these truths, you take away their ability to shame you. You find that you are no longer a collection of fragments trying to pass as a whole. You are a single, complex, beautiful human being who contains both the sunrise and the night sky. This process is the ultimate act of self-kindness. It is the decision to stop being a harsh landlord to your own soul and to start being a welcoming host. It is the realization that you don't need to be cured of your humanity. You don't need to be scrubbed clean of your flaws to be deserving of a seat at the table. Wholeness is not about reaching a state of perfection where you never feel a negative emotion again. It is about reaching a state of grace where you no longer hate yourself for feeling them. The next time you feel a shadow emotion rising up, that pang of resentment, or that of inadequacy, try not to push it away. Instead, greet it with a quiet curiosity. Ask it what it's trying to protect. Ask it what it needs. When you stop fighting yourself, the war ends, and in the silence that follows, you finally find the peace that only comes from being completely, unapologetically whole. You aren't just the polished version of yourself that you show to the world. You are the entirety of your experience, the light and the dark, and all of it belongs. We talk a lot about the boundaries we need to set with the people in our lives, the family members who ask too much, the friends who don't listen, or the bosses who call after hours. We understand that without those lines, we become resentful and drained. But there is another kind of boundary that is even more vital for your peace of mind, and it is the one you set within yourself. It is the invisible line you draw in the dirt of your own mind, deciding which thoughts are allowed to take up residence and which ones are simply trespassing. Think about the way your inner critic operates. It doesn't ask for permission. It just barges in, unannounced, usually when you are at your most vulnerable, when you've just made a mistake, when you're tired, or when you're trying something new. It speaks in absolutes. You always ruin things. You'll never be enough. Everyone is disappointed in you. For most of our lives, we've treated these thoughts as if they were news reports, objective, factual, and indisputable. We let them sit in the driver's seat of our emotions and steer us straight into anxiety. Setting an internal boundary means recognizing that just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's true. It is the moment you stand up to that inner voice and say, "I hear you, but I'm not going to let you talk to me that way anymore." It is the realization that you have the right to protect yourself from your own harshness. You are the observer of your mind, not the victim of it. You can choose which voices get a seat at the table and which ones have to stay at the door. Imagine your mind as a garden. An internal boundary is the fence that keeps the weeds from choking out the flowers. It's not about pretending the weeds don't exist. It's about deciding that they don't get to run the whole place. When a thought comes in that is designed only to shame you or make you feel small, an internal boundary is the hand you hold up to say, "Stop. This is not helpful. And this is not kind." This isn't about positive thinking or forcing yourself to be happy when you aren't. It's about fairness. It's about giving yourself the same benefit of the doubt that you would give to anyone else. If you wouldn't allow a stranger to stand in your living room and tell you that you're a failure, why do you allow your own mind to do it? Setting this boundary is an act of profound self-respect. It is the moment you decide that your internal space is sacred and that you deserve to feel safe inside your own head. It takes practice to build these boundaries. At first, the inner critic will try to climb over the fence. It will tell you that you're being unrealistic or that you're letting yourself off the hook. But every time you catch a cruel thought and choose to replace it with a neutral or kind one, the boundary gets stronger. You start to develop a sense of internal sovereignty. You begin to realize that you don't have to believe everything you think. This boundary also applies to how much of yourself you give away. Sometimes, the internal boundary is the one that tells you it's okay to stop working, even if the work isn't perfect. It's the boundary that says it's okay to say no to a social event because your soul is tired, even if you should go. It's about protecting your energy from your own demands. When you set an internal boundary, the world doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. You realize that while you can't control what happens outside of you, you can control the environment inside of you. You can create a sanctuary. You can decide that no matter what the day brings, you will not join in the chorus of people or thoughts that are trying to bring you down. You become your own protector, your own advocate, and your own safe harbor. You finally give yourself the permission to breathe, knowing that the most important person in your life, you, is finally on your side. We often think of self-kindness as a private act, something that begins and ends within the walls of our own minds. We worry that by focusing on our own healing or being too soft with ourselves, we are somehow being selfish or withdrawing from the people who need us. But the truth is exactly the opposite. The way you treat yourself sets the temperature for every room you walk into. It is the invisible frequency you emit that tells the world how to interact with you, and more importantly, how you will interact with the world. You cannot pour from an empty cup, but more than that, you cannot offer a vintage of grace to others that you haven't first allowed to age within yourself. Think about the people in your life who make you feel truly safe, the ones who allow you to be messy, who listen without judgment, and who seem to have an endless well of patience. If you look closely, those people are rarely the ones who are at war with themselves. It is hard to be truly patient with a friend's mistakes when you are burning with self-impatience for your own. It is nearly impossible to offer genuine, deep-seated empathy to a partner when you are starved for it yourself. When we are harsh with our own souls, that harshness inevitably leaks out. It shows up as a short temper, as a tendency to judge others to make ourselves feel better, or as a coldness that we use to protect our own bruised hearts. By resetting your internal standard to one of gentleness, you become a more stable and radiant presence for everyone else. When you are no longer spending all your energy policing your own thoughts and hiding your own flaws, you suddenly have an enormous amount of space available for the people you love. You find that you have more room to listen because you aren't distracted by your own internal critic. You have more capacity to forgive because you've learned the hard, beautiful work of forgiving yourself. Your kindness toward others becomes an extension of the peace you've brokered within. This is the ripple effect. When you choose to be gentle with yourself after a long day, you are less likely to snap at the person who greets you at the door. When you forgive yourself for a mistake at work, you are more likely to offer a helping hand to a coworker who is struggling. You aren't being selfish by focusing on your own internal climate. You are building a foundation that allows you to show up more authentically for the people who matter most. You are teaching the people around you, your children, your friends, your community, what it looks like to be a whole, self-respecting human being. You are giving them permission to be kind to themselves too. Imagine the shift in a home or a workplace when even one person decides to stop the cycle of shame. It changes the air. It lowers the collective anxiety. Gentleness is contagious. When you stop demanding perfection from yourself, you unconsciously stop demanding it from others. And that is where true connection begins. We don't connect through our perfections. We connect through our shared humanity, our shared struggles, and the way we support one another through them. You are not an island. Every act of self-kindness you perform sends a wave out into the world. It may seem small, choosing to rest, choosing to speak gently to your reflection, choosing to let go of a should. But these moments accumulate. They turn into a life lived with an open heart. And an open heart is the greatest gift you can offer to a world that is often cold and demanding. By befriending yourself, you are not turning your back on the world. You are finally preparing yourself to enter it with a kind of love that is steady, honest, and real. You are becoming a source of the very thing we are all searching for, a place where it is finally okay to be human. Befriending yourself is not a destination you reach, a ribbon you cross, and then never have to think about again. It isn't a mountain you climb once just to plant a flag and stay at the peak forever. In reality, it is a daily, sometimes hourly, return. It is the quiet commitment to keep showing up for yourself, especially on the days when you feel like you've gone backward, when the old voices are loud, or when the weight of the world feels heavy again. Most of us have spent a lifetime living away from home, camping out in the expectations of others, or wandering in the wilderness of self-doubt. Returning home is the process of finally walking back through your own front door. Think about what it feels like to come home after a very long, exhausting trip. There is that moment when you put your keys in the lock, drop your heavy bags on the floor, and finally let out the breath you didn't even realize you were holding. That is what self-kindness feels like. It is the moment you stop performing, stop defending, and stop trying to earn your right to exist. You don't need to earn your own friendship through achievements, milestones, or by being fixed. You deserve your own support simply because you are here, navigating this complex, messy, and beautiful life as best as you can. We often think we need to wait until we are better to come home. We tell ourselves we'll be kind to ourselves when the house is clean, when the debt is paid, when the heart is healed. But home is exactly where you go when things are falling apart. You don't wait to be perfect to walk through your own door. You come home because you are tired. You come home because you are hurt. You come home to find the rest that only you can give to yourself. Every morning you wake up is a chance to reset the tone of this relationship. It is an invitation to ask, How can I be on my own side today? It's a promise that no matter what happens out there, no matter who misreads you, who lets you down, or what mistakes you make, you will not abandon yourself. You will be the one person who stays. This internal loyalty is the most transformative power you possess. It changes the way you walk through the world because you are no longer looking for everyone else to tell you that you're okay. You already know you are because you've made peace with the person in the mirror. Returning home means creating a space within your own heart where you can sit by the fire and let the world go for a while. It is a place where you can be honest about your fears without being judged, and where you can celebrate your small wins without being told they aren't enough. It is the realization that you are not a guest in your own life. You are the host. You are the one who gets to decide that the shoulds and the shames are no longer welcome at your table. As you move forward, remember that you will wander away again. You will have moments where you get caught up in the noise and forget to be kind. That's okay. That is part of being human. The beauty isn't in being perfect. The beauty is in the return. The beauty is in the moment you catch yourself being harsh and you choose to stop. You take a breath, you drop the heavy bags of judgment, and you simply walk back home. You are a living, breathing miracle, and you have survived 100% of your hardest days. That is not a small thing. It is a testament to your strength and your soul. So, give yourself permission to rest. Give yourself permission to be proud of how far you've come, even if you're not where you thought you'd be. You are home. You are safe. And you are finally, deeply, and truly on your own side. Let yourself be at peace. Let yourself be at home. The journey of befriending yourself is perhaps the most quiet, yet most profound revolution you will ever undertake. It doesn't happen with a roar or a sudden, dramatic transformation. Instead, it happens in the soft stillness of a Tuesday morning when you choose to forgive yourself for a small mistake. It happens in the middle of a crowded room when you acknowledge your own social exhaustion and decide it's okay to leave early. It happens every time you replace a sharp internal critique with a gentle, supportive observation.